25th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Welcome. Who's to blame if the Vols don't make the Sweet 16? Tennessee basketball leaning too much or too little on Dalton Knecht. Which two SEC teams are the most likely to make the Final Four? Success for Kelly Harper in the tournament. How do we quantify that? Stephen Pearl takes a shot at the Vols. I got his classic standing on third base. Thought he hit a triple. Spring practice position battles. We'll get into that. Got a lot going on. It is Three Blind Mice, Mark, as you put down on the message board. John Adams joins us now, and his appearance brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Center. First, Caleb, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing, guys?
Never better. John, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
You look even better than fine. Don't say fine. Philip Fulmer used to say that meant feeling insecure, neurotic, and I don't remember what the E stood for.
Philip Fulmer never used the word neurotic.
That is a 4-syllable word. Today's tough question is right now. Again, John's appearance brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Centers. I'll tell you more about them as we go along. Today's tough question is brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Here we go.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
I ask you this question, and it's pretty simple. Who's to blame if the Vols don't make the Sweet 16? That will also be our poll question on YouTube momentarily. John, as our guest, I'll begin with you. Who's to blame if the Vols don't make the Sweet 16? Because if you go by rankings, they have been a top 5-ish team the entire season. Therefore, you would think you should make at least the Elite 8. If they don't make the Sweet 16, whose fault is it? John?
Well, I think most people will blame Rick Barnes. He might not, but most people will. It goes back to his track record of doing well in the regular season, not so well in the postseason. Tennessee has the same track record. So ultimately, he's the guy that gets the blame. He's the captain of the ship. I think player-wise, if they falter, when you look at the stats and wins and losses, it will probably fall on the veteran players, Josiah Jordan-James and Santiago Vescovi. Vescovi's, I think he's averaging about 3 points per game in the last 7 games. In 7 of Tennessee's 8 losses, Triple J was 8 of 42 from the field. Dave, you could go 8-42 from the field if you had like a ladder to stand on or something, shoot over.
I'm not a good shooter.
Yeah, so that.
Oh, by myself?
You what?
Yeah, I could hit one. By myself, just at the gym, I could hit 1 of 3 shots. Yeah,
well,
I could do that.
He's not even hitting 20% in those losses.
Oh, yeah, that's something. Yeah, Caleb, we could both do that. I don't know if we could do it against stiff competition. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, everybody. So today's tough question, Caleb, if the Vols don't make it past the Sweet 16, it will be blank's fault.
I mean, I'm with John. It will be Rick Barnes' fault. I mean, yeah, it's just going to be Rick Barnes' fault. I can't even go any different. I'm sorry, because even if I'm telegraphing this, no matter what happens, if Tennessee doesn't make the Sweet 16, I'm going to blame Rick Barnes, because even if something happens, like, I don't know, Zakai Ziegler just has an awful game in the round of 32 versus Texas, let's say, I'm going to blame Rick Barnes for playing Zakai Ziegler too much during the season then. Because I've been critical of that the whole time. So, yeah, no matter what, I am blaming Rick Barnes if they don't win the Sweet 16.
Let me tell you who it's going to be, guys. The way the season's going to play out, if it ends in a negative fashion, I'll tell you, it's not Rick Terry, but Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? Go to rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. Dalton Knecht. Guys, if Tennessee's having trouble scoring, we saw in that Auburn game that Rick Barnes is going to say, all right, boys, let's huddle up over to the sidelines out in the corner and let Dalton do something. They didn't go that route in their past two losses. Why? I'm not sure. But as Caleb has pointed out, I'm not sure how much they cared about the SEC tournament. Guys, if they go in that direction and they put all the pressure on him. I was there in person in the stands, thanks to Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones. We certainly appreciate that. And I was in the stands for that Auburn game, and it was up to Knecht to bring them back. And I think in desperation mode, they'll go that way in the NCAA tournament. And I'm not blaming Knecht if he misses a shot, because I don't necessarily think he will. But if this ends in a negative fashion, it's probably because Knecht has missed a clutch shot at some point coming down the pipe. John, thoughts?
Nobody should blame Dalton Knecht. He's the reason this team got as far as it did. I mean, you look at the Kentucky game, Dalton Knecht didn't do what he did against Auburn, even though he scored 40 points. His accuracy wasn't as good. And what happens after the game? Rick Barnes talked about he's got to be aware of his open teammates and get them the ball. Well, Triple J got the ball or an open shot 3 at the end of with a chance to tie with about 20 seconds to go. And you know where that ball landed. I just think Barnes is always harping on that about, look for the open man. And I think Dalton Knecht does a really good job of that. But if I were guarding Tennessee, if I were defending Tennessee, I would guard Dalton Knecht hard, let him make the pass, and just count on those other guys missing the shot.
I would too. And I hate it because if my scenario plays out, Caleb, Dalton Knecht's going to be like the villain. He missed the shot late.
Dave. How could he be the villain? My gosh.
Not villain. Villain's the wrong word. Can I change that up a little bit?
No, you said it. You're stuck with it. Go ahead, Caleb.
Okay. No, Caleb, don't go ahead. He's going to be remembered as a scorer who didn't perform in the clutch, which is unfair. Let me say that.
Well, of course he won't be remembered that way. He won the game against Auburn with making shots with guys all over him.
All right, Caleb. What do you say?
This whole scenario kind of reminds me of John. I don't know if you guys remember this, but you guys will find this funny. There was an Allen Iverson interview a few years ago when people said he took too many shots with the Sixers, and his quote was, well, if I pass the ball to Dikembe Mutombo, and he passes it to Theo Ratliff, and he passes it to Eric Snow, and he passes it to Aaron McKee, and Aaron McKee passes it back to me, and there's 2 seconds left on the shot clock, what am I supposed to do? and that seems like...
I love that.
Yeah, and that seems like a situation with Dalton Knecht, what John was bringing up. And I'm actually, Dave, I'm still with John because, yes, Dalton Knecht, you expect this team is not in a situation where, yes, Dalton Knecht is a leading scorer. He's the guy that shoots them out of offensive funks. But if you really look at the offense, they actually run an offense. They run a motion offense where they do try to see who's going to score and who's got the open look. They just turn to Dalton Knecht when they're desperate for a bucket and they need something. And so it's not really designed the way you would think a team like, a team like that has Kevin Durant, and you're just trying to make sure you can get Kevin Durant the ball wherever he is on the court and have him score every time. It's not really set up that way. So I think if they lose, it will be because they're tired. It will be because they're mentally drained. I said from the start, this team goes as Jonas Aidoo goes. The team, if you look at the SEC regular season, it was pretty much win or loss whether or not Jonas Aidoo got double figures, determined whether or not they won or lost. And so Aidoo's got to really be a force down low. I mean, against St. Peter's, he should. His tallest defender is 6'7", 185 pounds. Okay, if Jonas Aidoo can't get like 30 points, then that's a problem. But
I'm sorry, Caleb, go ahead.
Yeah, but I think that if he doesn't do that, or if Dalton Knecht misses shots, or if Zakai Ziegler can't slash to the basket the way he's been doing, I'm going to say it's because they're tired, and I'm going to say they're tired because Rick Barnes ran them way too much, played them way too many minutes during the season.
Okay, I don't want my scenario to play out. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. But the reason I go with Dalton Knecht is I think he's going to take a final shot, and if he misses it, that's going to be what's remembered, unfortunately. And I think for the first time I saw in that SEC tournament him slam the ball down and like he's getting a little frustrated. The guy I'd be frustrated with most is Santiago Vescovi. I mean, my goodness. I wrote a column that it's time to put him on the bench to start the game, and he can perhaps provide you a spark at the first TV timeout. John, with the way he's been playing, is that a stupid idea? Because I really didn't have anybody disagree with me on social media.
No, I agree with you. He has no confidence in his shot. I mean, there's as much chance of him knocking down, breaking the backboard as there is of him making a three right now. He has no confidence, and shooting is all about confidence. I know, Dave, you have a lot of confidence in your shot, and that's probably why you do so well.
No, I admit I'm a terrible shooter. Now, if you want to go play racquetball,
I was kidding. I could just tell looking at you that you were a horrible shooter. I can spot those things. No, Vescovi, he plays hard, but he can't get rid of the ball fast enough when it's passed to him. He's throwing it to somebody else. Going back to Caleb's Allen Iverson analogy, he's looking for Allen Iverson. I think no, that's not a bad idea. I thought the same thing watching that game the other day against Mississippi State. Whether it mattered or not, I would try and give more minutes to somebody else. If you don't have any confidence in your shot and you're not going to take an open shot, so you're no help on offense. Vescovi is a very good defender, but I really think, and maybe this has to do with how hard Tennessee practices, I just think he looks a step slow to me.
He does.
Now.
He does. And Caleb, I want you to weigh in on this too. He just doesn't look like the same player. So he looks a step slow. And the other thing, Caleb, he looks like he's sometimes pulling the string on his shot. And I pointed that out before. That's a sign of a lack of confidence. I don't know why. I know he's been through personal issues. I don't want to call him out. But Caleb, this is not even close to the same player that he's been previous in his career.
Yeah, and well, you guys have brought up consistently, Dave, you've consistently talked about the change in the offense. So just it's not that there's no screening in the high-low motion offense, which is what Rick Barnes has changed to because he has Dalton Knecht. But Rick Barnes for most of his career ran mostly the flex offense, and the reason, and that's actually what Bruce Pearl ran, and that's what Tom Davis taught. And there's a lot of backdoor screening on the flex offense, which was able to allow Vescovi to get open a lot of times to take shots. He's got to get. He's kind of in the high low. You're kind of on your own to kind of get open. And Dave, you brought this up. We're seeing that he just can't get open the way he usually can. And now, even when he is wide open, like guys, that's not even a fair thing to say because last Friday in the SEC tournament, Vescovi was about as open as you could possibly be. Mississippi State was at a 1-3-1 half the game, and he still was hitting bricks. I think because he wasn't getting open so consistently in rhythm all year, he's now just completely out of rhythm and completely in a funk. And so I it's got to be a confidence factor at this point, because before Friday I would have said it's the change in the offense, but Friday he was standing at the top of the key and they were just letting him shoot and he was missing.
John, could you frame this within the team as, Santi, we're trying to do you a favor here. We think that coming off the bench may actually help you. And double question, bad journalism, would you want to make that drastic of a change this late in the season, John?
Well, I think throughout the season, it's imperative to make changes when necessary. I don't think you can consider, oh, it's the NCAA tournament, we can't dare make them change here. Maybe that would help him. I just wonder if it would at this juncture, though. I mean, it gets down to, like I said, the confidence.
It might not help him, but it might help the team. I mean, he's a liability.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on it. What you opened with and what you said, maybe it's time to put him on the bench. I think, yeah, you need to give those minutes to somebody else because it's the way things are going. I know he plays hard defense. He's always played hard defense, but as I said, he looks a step slow to me this season. And go back to the Kentucky game. Kentucky guards, and I know they're very good. They're NBA players. They constantly beat Tennessee off the dribble and got in the lane consistently. It just so, yeah. Why not play him? I would at least be conscious of wanting to play him fewer minutes in this NCAA tournament.
I'm with you, but the flip side is Rick Barnes will tell you he's the hardest worker on the team. I've never thought he was dogging it when I've watched him. That's a tough guy to bench. It's easier for guys more like James Banks than Santiago Vescovi.
Wow.
If you got that, yeah, random James.
Where did that come from?
Okay, if Vols don't make it past the Sweet 16, it will be Blank's fault. Triple J, Rick Barnes, Santiago Vescovi, or Dalton Knecht. For the first time ever in one of our poll questions, one choice does not have a single vote, and that's Dalton Knecht, which was my selection because I think he'll be put in a bad position. I want to be real clear. People defending Dalton Knecht, I love him. I was the first one to tell you he's one of the best players in the nation. But I think he's going to be put in a bad situation, and people are going to remember him as a missed shot. I hope I'm wrong. Now, Caleb, let me ask you this. If they were to not start Vescovi, what would be the options as you see them? I've got my thoughts, but I would think Gainey would be one. What are the other possibilities?
Rick Barnes loves defense. If it's not Vescovi, he's going to start Jemai Meshack at that point. Because honestly, let's be honest, everybody talks about the great defensive effort Vescovi gives to keep him on the court. Jemai Meshack's actually a better defender. So Vescovi's in the starting lineup because of what he can bring offensively.
Yes. I mean, Johnny's absolutely right. And the thing that I like about the Gainey idea, particularly, you're right, about getting better defense out of Meshack, but the thing I like about Gainey is he can be hot and cold. So if he starts and he's cold, well, then you've got an even better reason to bring Vescovi off the bench.
Yeah, Meshack is considered a lockdown defender, so he gives you something there. I think in general in the NCAA tournament, teams that play better defense, because defense is so much about motivation, effort, and everybody's motivated in the NCAA tournament. You know, you lose, you go home. Everybody's motivated. I think it comes down to making shots, making tough shots. That's all the NCAA tournaments I've covered through the years. The teams that got on a roll often were hitting well. Had sometimes an inside guy too, and more than one guy got hot. So I think I know Gainey is kind of a wild card because he's hot or cold. But if he's cold, you send him back to the bench. But if he gets hot,
I mean, he could win a game for you in the NCAA tournament. So I would give him some of those minutes too.
No, I agree. John's appearance every Tuesday brought to you by our good friend at Newbert Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
So we reset the poll question. Would you bench Santiago Vescovi? I say yes. John, you say, are you in agreement? Okay. Caleb,
Sure.
Would you make that big of a change at this point in the season?
Yeah. For any other reason than I actually agreed with your column on it, Dave, you wrote about, which is if you put Vescovi to the bench, it could be kind of the thing he needs to get his mentality right. And he could come off the bench and be a massive threat offensively.
I'm with you. I don't understand why they're not doing that. It's a little. I understand the reluctance because he is such a team player and so grand and so great and done so much for the Vols. This is a far different question, John. We all think he should come off the bench, and that's our poll question on the YouTube page. Please take part. Does anybody think that Rick Barnes will really make that move?
I would be surprised if he did. And Rick Barnes is hardly alone in this case because coaches become loyal to players. And I think he's really loyal to Vescovi because of all he's put into the program. Remember, he's an all-SEC player. Vescovi is. He's made all-SEC. He looks nothing like an all-SEC player now. But Rick Barnes has a history with him. Vescovi didn't have to come back this season, but he did, as did Josiah Jordan-James. In fact, he came back as a walk-on. They didn't want him to come back, and he chose to come back. So I think Barnes is really loyal to those players. They've had some really good moments here, and they are not lacking in effort. And as you brought up earlier, when players exude effort, coaches, that matters so much to coaches. It matters to teams too. But still, at the end of the day, in basketball, you got to put it in the basket. And if you're not doing that, it doesn't matter how hard you're playing.
It's not the most complicated game. You got to put it in the basket. John still remembers taking the ladder and getting it out of the peach basket. Caleb,
Yes.
Do you think
dunking it in a peach basket, tearing the peach basket down? What I
you were
remember.
the first one to open up the bottom of the peach basket, and everybody's like, my goodness, why didn't we think of that?
Yeah, those idiots.
Naismith's like, Adam's guy's bringing it. Caleb, do you think there's any chance Rick Barnes does this, or are we just all having a good time talking about it?
No, he doesn't do this. Rick Barnes is super stubborn as it is, and he has his own philosophies and his own beliefs. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's willing to run his team into the ground because he doesn't believe in letting up in practices, and also because he believes you earn playing time. So he's not going to play backups if he doesn't believe they've earned playing time, and he doesn't care if that tires his starters out for the NCAA tournament.
What does Caleb really feel? Hey now. All right. Is Tennessee relying on Dalton Knecht too much? That's the question I'll ask you, John Adams. Have they relied on Dalton Knecht too much? Once they realized he was a star, and I think that was before the Auburn game, they relied on him a lot in the Auburn game. Have they gotten to the point where they're relying on him too much?
Not at all. They relied on him in the Auburn game out of necessity. That was a really good team with really great defenders and a lot of depth. And Tennessee's overall offense would have struggled without him. They gave him the ball. Auburn didn't do anything wrong defending Dalton Knecht. It's got good defenders, good one-on-one guys, and he just kept making shots. No, I would rely on Dalton Knecht more, not less.
Caleb, what about you? Too much, too little, just right?
Just right. And we have to break down, it goes back to our previous topic. Dalton Knecht was supposed to be the scorer for this team. The spot-up sharpshooters were supposed to be Santiago Vescovi and Jordan Gainey. they haven't been spot up sharpshooters. I mean, we're going at Santiago Vescovi, but actually Jordan Gainey has been worse from three this year, guys. He's 28.7% on the year from outside, and he was targeted as a transfer literally just to shoot the ball from three.
He scares me every time he goes into the game. So, I don't know if he's going to be red hot or ice cold. I mean, I'm just like, okay, let's roll the dice. We're at the craps table at Harrah's in Vegas.
No, that you are right about that. That's very true. I mean, and also it's worth noting that that Zakai Ziegler actually is averaging more minutes per game than Dalton Knecht right now. Now it's slight. It's like 30.8 to 30.2 or something like that. So it's like or to 30, but like still Zakai is averaging more minutes, and Dalton's usage rate, is 32.1%. That's about 10 more than anybody else on the team. But I'm with John. I think that they're relying on him just right. The whole idea of Dalton Knecht was Rick Barnes was saying, let's run the motion offense. Let's play inside out. Jonas Sadu kicking it out to Vescovi or Gainey, and Zakai Ziegler slashing to the basket. Maybe James will get hot. And if none of that is working, we'll give the ball to Dalton Knecht. And what was it Doug Collins said about Michael Jordan? Give the ball to Michael and everybody get the F out of the way. That's basically the plan if the offense falls through.
He's proven he can do that, John, but with such an experienced coach and what's supposed to be a pretty good roster, that almost seems like a lame way to win. I mean, that's not how the Bulls won, to use Caleb's analogy, that's not how the Bulls won championships.
Yes, it is.
No. I mean, he got more people involved. I really like what they're doing with Dalton Knecht. So I'm not going to say they're leaning on him too much, but I'm curious, John, as to what you think.
Well, when I talk about leaning on him, where I want you leaning on him is when down the stretch, again, going back to the Kentucky game, the last play when the game was still on the line, Dalton Knecht running the baseline fell down. So the ball had to go the other way, and it ended up in Triple J's hands. He missed an open three. I want him I would prefer Dalton Knecht to take a tightly guarded shot from three-point range. I don't care what the stats are. I would prefer him taking that shot with the game on the line than anybody else shooting it from three-point range.
Okay, how about this? Both of you guys. Dalton Knecht, well-guarded, maybe a little bit of a fade. Santiago Vescovi wide A open. I mean, so open that you wonder if the other team knows the game's going on. Who are you taking in the clutch?
Oh, there's no question.
Wide open?
Yeah. You want Vescovi shooting the ball with the game on the line? That's a goodbye game. You're gone. Get out of here. You're out of the tournament. Come on.
Caleb, we never thought we'd be saying that a month ago, especially not 6 months ago, did we?
No, I didn't think so. I thought Dalton Knecht was actually going to be more of a wing defender for Tennessee. I did not see him becoming the type of scorer that he became. But, yeah, it's...
I also didn't know that we jump all over Vescovi either. I mean, that's a wide open Vescovi 3 was going down back in the day, right?
Yes. And also, I have to point this out because we're saying earlier we're lying too much because I did just bring up those Bulls teams. Dalton Knecht's usage rate for this team right now was lower than Michael's was for all 6 Bulls championship teams. And there's this lie out there that Phil Jackson taught Michael to be unselfish.
I'm not going to talk. I don't want to talk about the Bulls.
I'm just saying.
I think they're using Dalton Knecht in the perfectly right way. And that's John coming down the stretch. So, Caleb, I don't know if I've officially asked you, do you think they're using him too much?
No. That's what I was saying from the start. No, they're not. They're using him just enough. I think they're using him perfectly right now. A 32.1% usage rate is about what you have your leading scorer do. And he's right now their best 3-point shooter probably. So I don't think there's any issue. And I'm with John. I'd rather Dalton Knecht take a contested shot than I would Santiago Vescovi or Josiah Jordan James or Jordan Gainey take an open shot. Now, maybe you could win me over with Zakai Ziegler, who's been oddly efficient from 3 this year. I think that's just a law of averages thing. But I think this team goes anyway. People keep forgetting this. The first look of this team is not Dalton Knecht. He's just the one that takes over. They look to get it to Adu first to see if he can score inside.
May I play devil's advocate for you both? And I'm going to start with John. Is that if Dalton Knecht's so darn good, why did Tennessee lose its last 2 games? And one was very lopsided against a lesser opponent. That's the case. Why didn't they say, let's clear it out and ISO Dalton and at least keep one game close and maybe win one of 2?
Well,
if Dalton's that good, why couldn't they get more out of him in clutch moments?
You're talking about the Mississippi State game?
Yeah, I'm going to Mississippi State game, then I'm going back to Kentucky as well.
Well, they got the ball to him. I mean, he scored 40 points against Kentucky. What?
Yeah.
Well, can you win that way is my point.
Yes.
If you're leaning on him too much, you can't. It can affect the flow of your team, which I guess does go back to the Bulls thing. I think that you can lean on a star player too much, and it affects the way everybody else plays. Am I alone in that thought process?
I don't. I mean, if the players are that weak-minded that they're affected because Dalton Knecht is taking more shots. I mean, I think he was I want to say he was 6 out of 15 from 3-point range in that game. I don't see how anybody could complain about Dalton Knecht taking more shots. It shouldn't affect the team, and I don't think it really does. I think they rely on him, but I don't think they say, oh, well, I don't have to do anything because Dalton Knecht will win the game for us. These guys, this is a really experienced team. I mean, they should be able to handle it. Hey, we got a star player. Let's use him. He's our safety net. When things go wrong, he'll pull us out. That should give the team confidence. Should take pressure off the rest of the players. I see it the other way. So, no, and oddly, in the Mississippi State game, there was a time there in the second half where Dalton Knecht was on the bench. And you can say, well, the game doesn't matter. Okay. You could say, well, let's rest Dalton Knecht or let's maybe he's not playing the kind of defense we want him to play. Let's send a message to him. None of that would make sense to me. When you're down and things are not going well, I think the one hope this team has is Dalton Knecht getting on a torrid streak, shooting-wise, like he did against Auburn. And I think that's the best chance Tennessee has of advancing in this NCAA tournament. Things aren't going well. They're getting ready to play themselves out of the tournament too early. And what do? Dalton Knecht just takes over. That's this team's chance to advance further than it ever has.
Wow, is that a good chance or is it a bad chance? Caleb, would we be having a more optimistic conversation about the Vols' chances if we were talking about how Knecht has been a nice piece and he's fit in and Vescovi's still playing well and this is a team effort? They didn't have to completely change their offense. I mean, would we be having that conversation at all, or am I being too devil's advocate-y?
Way too devil's advocate-y, because and no, this isn't a problem at all. And also, to address the Kentucky and Auburn games, Tennessee lost to Kentucky because Kentucky shot 15 to 29 from 3, not because they didn't have enough offensive help on the other side of the ball. Kentucky just had one of those type of games where they shot 15 to 29. Tennessee took a little bit of effort off defensively because they just won the SEC regular season title. They were mentally drained. I don't really care about that game that much because of everything they had done to win the SEC. They lost to Mississippi State because they tanked. I mean, that's what happened there. They threw that game. So,
which is definitely a topic for another day altogether. We will get into that. I want to remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by our good friends at Quality Tire Pro. Right there in downtown Chattanooga, the Eberle family has been there since 1957. Major brands of tires, they got them. Full service automotive, brake alignments, got that too. Oil changes, got that. Stop by and say, hey, Bo, downtown, Quality Tire Pro. Quality Tire Pro, that's where I get my car serviced, and you should too. Quality Tire Pro. Say, hey, Bo, that Off the Hook Sports sent you. All right, so I'm resetting the poll question once again. So it was basically 50-50. Would you start Santiago Vescovi in the NCAA tournament? No, he's struggling too much with 52% of the vote. Yes, he's earned it, 47% of the vote. And I'm going to flip that up to are the Vols leaning too much on Dalton Knecht? John Adams joins us each and every Tuesday. You know we love that. He never takes a vacation. His appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
Everybody, this is Jacob Warren asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Get your bracket filled out yet, John?
Sort of.
Okay. Well, you can participate. We would like for you to do so in our bracket challenge. Your opportunity to win great prizes. Just go to Hooker's Corner, and that's easy to do on our Patreon page. You just look for Off the Hook Sports. I'll put the link right now, and you can take part in our bracket challenge. We'll give away fantastic prizes to the winner. It's pretty easy, and you do not have to be a paid member to take part in the challenge. So there is the link. We want as many people as we can get on there. So I filled out my men's bracket yesterday. So this morning I'm filling out my women's bracket. And I was thinking, do you fill out a women's bracket, John? You gave me a weird look. Caleb, do you fill out a women's bracket?
No,
Yeah.
I was just surprised that I just was surprised you were filling out one.
I'm not sexist.
Did you really fill it out, or are you just saying that?
Hell no, I didn't fill out a women's bracket. I didn't fill out an NIT bracket either. Caleb, you?
I actually filled out an NIT bracket when I was about 14. I kid you not. I did it. It was actually that time. Do you remember when Tennessee was excluded from the NCAA tournament because John Higgins was academically disqualified? And the commercial appeal did an NIT bracket in Memphis. And they had
Was that Ron Slay in the Georgetown game being as bored as a human can possibly be?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember him running up and down the court thinking he would rather be laying on razor blades than to be in this game. All right,
why wouldn't you want to play for such a great coach like Buzz Peterson, guys?
That was one of the saddest moments in Thompson Bowling Arena ever. And that Thompson Bowling Arena is brought to you by Kroger's. You can check them out. They have their Thursday meat specials there at Kroger's, the Kroger Center. I think it's called something else. John, the Lady Vols, what do they have to do in order to be deemed a success this season?
Well, they need to guard the inbounds pass with 1.1 seconds to go, and they're up by 2. I would highly recommend that strategy going forward.
Good call.
Yeah, just in case that comes up.
Well, as far as levels of the tournament, let me ask you this. To be a success, the Lady Vols need to make it to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four championship game.
Sweet 16, that got Kelly Harper a raise and a contract extension all the way to 2028 when the Lady Vols accomplished that last season.
Tracy Morgan, what'd you say again?
That's crazy.
Sweet 16 is not a success, John. It's just
I'm just saying what happened last year. It's not a success in my eyes, but that got Kelly Harper a raise and a contract extension last season.
What is a success to you, Caleb?
I mean, I don't like to judge tournaments for coaches. I like to make my decisions without regard to the tournament because teams can get red hot, and then Dennis Felton keeps the job.
What do we suddenly have Jimmy Sexton of college basketball coaches on here?
I'm just saying,
representing them.
So I am like, and if I'm Danny White, in my mind, she's already fired. Okay, and unless she wins a national championship, she's fired. Okay,
now you're definitely Jimmy Sexton because you want her buyout and you want to get somebody else in that position.
Yes, she is fired no matter what she does, unless she wins the national championship. I might consider she makes a Final Four. Neither of those things are happening. But the funny thing is, John probably remembers covering this team, the 96-97 team. Lady Vol fans have spent the last 5 years under this delusion that every Lady Vol team in the NCAA tournament is like that 96-97 team that made that run after having a mediocre regular season. Guys, that's not the same team at all. Okay, that team dealt with so many, and John probably remembers more than he covered. I was very young at the time, but they had so many internal things happening during the season, and it just took them a while to come together, which they did in March.
That team also had Pat Summitt coaching it.
Exactly. That's a big difference.
John, let me tweak it a little bit. So you wouldn't see it as a success if they make the Sweet 16. I mean, to me, that's kind of baseline, like the men making the tournament. We all agree there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not a success.
So what would be a success for you, John? Or would you already have fired Kelly Harper in the middle of the season like Caleb?
I wouldn't have done it in the middle of the season, although it would have saved that last-second fiasco against South Carolina. I would think, you could say Elite 8, but when I look at this program, as Caleb mentioned, he doesn't put everything on the NCAA tournament. I think that's a measuring stick. But when I look at the program and the direction of it, there's not as much competition in the women's game. So it's easy for a team like Tennessee to make the tournament. You can have, it's not a great season for me for Tennessee to make the tournament or to make it to the Sweet 16. His has advantages other programs don't have because of its history. So I just think even if Tennessee made the Elite 8, go back to Holly Warlick, who succeeded Pat Summitt. Holly Warlick took her team to 3 Elite 8s. 3. Made the NCAA tournament every year for 7 years and was fired. So basically Tennessee's administration, albeit a different one then, was saying that's not good enough. We expect more. And if those expectations are the same, then you would make a coaching change. But again, I go back to last season. I don't think Danny White's going to give a coach a raise and extension and then fire a year later when she lost 12 games last year. She's lost 12 this season. One more is coming, 13 losses. So against a really difficult non-conference schedule.
Okay. You're the second person who's brought up that he has no intention of firing her no matter what happens in the tournament. And I'm talking about people with close ties to the Lady Vol program. If that's the case, is this just the new standard and Tennessee fans need to get used to it? Maybe make a run at the Sweet 16? Because you're giving me every indication, and so have other people, that Danny White is not even close to making a change.
Well, Danny White says he wants to contend for championships in all sports. This program in women's basketball is not going to contend for a championship. So to me, if that's your measuring stick, then you do make a change. I think what will happen, the most likely scenario would be Tennessee, the Lady Vols won't. I don't think they can be as good next year as they are this year or last year, because they lose Rakia Jackson, one of the best players in the country. This team is not void of talent. It's got talent. It just hasn't come together. I mean, Jill Spear transfer might have been the top scorer in the ACC last year, one of the top scorers. Jasmine Powell was a good point guard, second team All Big Ten when she was at Minnesota. It's got size, 6'6", Tamari Key. She's not a great player, but that size factors into it, gives opponents problems. It just does. They're not used to playing against somebody 6'6". So it has a lot of things in its favor. It has reasonably good depth, but it's falling short of what the expectations are. This team should have done better than what it's done, but I just don't see Danny White making a change now. I think he would make the change next year if the program's still not moving up.
So if they did the exact same thing next year, you think he'd make a change? Let's say they finished this year Sweet 16, 13 losses. Next year, Sweet 16, 13 losses. You think he'd make a change?
I would hope so.
There's no way. He doesn't care. It's not a revenue sport. He doesn't.
No, but
John, you brought it up. You enlightened me last week. He would rather spend money on that baseball program. It's cooler. It doesn't have an aging fan base, and it is most likely to be better received unless he can find another Pat Summitt, and those only come along about once every 100 years. He doesn't care.
I know. Here's the one reason why I might care. I think ADs, it looks good on the resume, and Tennessee's done very well overall at this, succeeding in every sport. That's something people point to when they look at an athletic director. They look at hires, they look at money, fundraising, and they look at how are you doing in all sports, even the ones that aren't revenue sports. Most of them aren't revenue sports. Tennessee has a pretty viable softball program. Of course, it's good in baseball. Football's coming up. It's good in a lot of sports. So as an AD, you would think he would want to maintain that and would want to contend for championships. Why not? You have all the resources you need here at Tennessee to contend for championships.
Caleb, do you think if he really opened up his heart and you gave him the truth serum and you asked Danny White, would you rather make the College World Series or make the Final Four in women's basketball? What do you think he would say?
I mean, he would say make the College World Series, but I'm with John. I don't think that doesn't mean there's not a standard he's going to hold women's basketball to. I think that, again, now, if you ask would he open the checkbook for a women's basketball coach, probably not. But Danny White is I keep telling you guys, is the best hirer of coaches in athletic director history. That's an award you could win, okay? And so if anybody could find a coach for cheap for women's basketball, Danny White would be the guy. And so why not try to improve the program? You do, like, Dave, what you're saying is be the athletic director of the football program and then men's basketball and maybe baseball to a degree, and then don't even try to set a standard for every other program. No, athletic directors, even if they care about the revenue-producing sports, they want to set a standard. And it's so very clear that Kelly Harper can't coach. It's funny, John, you brought up Tamari Key. Because Tamari Key, everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's the shot blocking machine. Yeah, and that's all she's been for 5 years with the program. She literally can't do anything else after 5 years of playing for Kelly Harper? Can you not develop this person just a little bit as a player?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, she really hasn't developed other aspects of her game. Now, you can say part of that is on the player, and she had a medical issue that sidelined her for a year. That's a factor in it too. But before the medical incident, she wasn't developing really. She relies on her size, and that does affect opponents. But when you bring up the coaching thing, see, to me, there's a core of fans that care about women's basketball here because of what Pat Summitt did, winning 8 national championships. And there's a statue of Pat Summitt across from the arena. Fans haven't forgotten that. Here's where Danny, remember how unpopular Dave Hart became as AD when he really goofy decision to change the Lady Vols in all other sports to just call them the Vols? The fan reaction was overwhelmingly opposed to that. I think it ultimately led to his firing. Okay, if Danny White hires a coach, and as Caleb pointed out, he's really good at this, his track record tells it all. If he hires a coach who turned this program around and made it a championship contender, imagine how the fans would react to that. This core of Lady Vols basketball fans, how it react. He'd be a hero for saving a program that just was going downhill. So there would be incentive, not maybe that much financially, but there would be incentive for him to succeed in a sport where Tennessee was once dominant. He could bring it back.
Wow, is he going to get as much credit for that as building a baseball program, Caleb, which he's done and it continues to do?
Actually, yes, because he would get more. And this is the other thing that athletic director arrogance, they like the credit for their success. If no matter what Tennessee baseball does, if they do it with Tony Vitello, John Curry is going to get the credit for that. He's the one who hired Tony Vitello. I mean, Dave Hart's the one getting credit for Rick Barnes right now and the success he had. It's unfortunately for Philip Fulmer, he's the one athletic director now who doesn't have a coach who doesn't even have one good hire to his resume. Every other athletic director at Tennessee had at least one, and Fulmer's got none. But
that's shocking that turn out that way.
Well, he'll always have Dave Clawson. So there you go. There's
he got a nice severance package for failing in every one of his hires, didn't he?
And every one of his fires. Yes, when he got fired, you got a nice severance package as well. John, what do you ultimately think the Lady Vols will do this upcoming NCAA tournament? And brought to you by BetUS.
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
John, what would you bet the Lady Vols do? Because our poll question is what would be deemed success for the Lady Vols. We'd love for you to vote on that. Sweet 16 does get 35% of the vote. Final Four gets 35% of the vote. Elite 8 gets 18% of the vote. Championship game, win or lose, gets 12% of the vote. So a lot of people think the Sweet 16 is just fine. I think that's sad.
Well, I don't think the Lady Vols are making the Sweet 16. They would have to beat NC State on its home court. NC State has decent size, a balanced team, and a really good coach in Wes Moore. The irony there is thick. NC State fired Kelly Harper as its coach. Wes Moore, who's been there quite a while now, formerly who coached at, I guess it was MTSU, Chattanooga maybe. A lot of Tennessee ties there. He's had great success there. He took the program to the Elite 8 once. He's won a bunch of games in a tough conference. So I think I just can't see Tennessee winning that game. So it'll go out in the second round.
Any chance they make a change then?
No.
Caleb, does that shock you? Round of 32? That's okay.
I mean, it shocked me if they went to the Sweet 16, but it's I'm disagreeing with, but I still think they make a change. I think they make a change. I think they make a change because Danny White knows that it's not going to be that expensive for him to hire the right coach with the Lady Vols. This is a chance to make his mark on another sport, and coaches like to make their mark, or athletic directors like to make their mark. They have a level of arrogance about them to do that.
Yeah, but speaking to that arrogance, Caleb, do you want to be the AD that gave a coach a raise and a contract extension, and then a year later, with not that great a difference in record, you get rid of her? Doesn't that speak to your previous failure?
I think raises and contract extensions are overrated. I think that's just part of the process of like hitting certain things as a coach, but that doesn't necessarily mean your job is safe. I've never really considered it that way. I mean, I think that I've never really considered a raise or a contract extension a reflection of an athletic director. I've always considered that they're just trying to, for the PR sake, saying they're still committed to a coach, but that doesn't mean that behind the scenes they're not willing to fire him. Only Dave Hart publicly undercut a coach's contract one time because, as you guys remember, he basically all but said after 2011, Derek Dooley's a dead man walking because I'm not renewing anybody's contracts on this staff.
Okay, I got a lot of you peeps out there that are a part of the show that have not hit that like button. So please go ahead and do that. We need the like button on there, and that greatly helps us open up the show to more and more people. Caleb thinks that 2 teams from the SEC are going to make the Final Four. Does John agree? And the show represented by Banks and Jones. Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. John, if 2 SEC teams make the Final Four, who is most likely to be half of that quattro?
If 2 teams make it, who is most likely to be half of those 2 teams?
Exactly.
That was a strangely worded question, Dave. I'm just going to ignore it and go,
Caleb came up with it.
At least. Okay, then it's still strangely worded to what you presented to me.
I didn't come up with it like that.
Davis wording was.
John, do not know.
Yeah,
do not let him do this to me.
Yeah,
we're
going home in the tournament. We're going home in the tournament, and it's Caleb's fault, not mine. Thanks, Dave. Okay, forget the question. Auburn and Kentucky are the 2 teams I like the most out of the SEC to make the Final Four.
Boy, that's hard to argue with, Caleb. I like Auburn's coaching a lot, and it feels like Kentucky started to put something together. And when they decide to play defense, they're scary. And you would think they would decide to play defense in elimination games, right?
Yeah, but I'm actually going to go with Tennessee and Kentucky, believe it or not. I'm serious on that. I'm going to go with Tennessee, Kentucky. I think Kentucky is uniquely equipped to stop Houston when they're in the same bracket. And we've said all year that this is a different Tennessee team. This is different than any team Rick Barnes has ever coached. John, we said yesterday, if he doesn't make a run this year, they will never, ever, ever make a run. Because this team is so uniquely built. I don't care about the last 2 games. I think people are overreacting about that. I see a very, very clear path for them to the Final Four, including I like this matchup with Purdue now better than when they played Purdue back in November when they were adjusting still to, like I talked about, the high-low motion offense. So,
well, if you're picking Tennessee, let's dive into that for a second. So what do you like about their draw?
So the first team they play is St. Peter's, who, again, that's when you look at matchups and where like lower seeds can pull off an upset, that's a lower seed that has no shot at pulling off an upset. I'm going out here right now and saying they don't have any shot at pulling off an upset. I am staking my claim. I would bet everything that St. Peter's, that's almost my surest bet. Okay, they don't belong in the tournament. They were one of those red hot conference tourney winners. They rely on an inside presence to win games. Their inside guys are 6'6" and 6'7". That works in your little conference that you're in. That doesn't work when you're playing the SEC or a big name team.
Your
And
little conference.
if you're going to be a lower seed that pulls off the upset, you have to be a threat from three. They're not. So that I'm throwing them out. The next one, they would play Texas, Virginia, or Colorado State. These are all really like mediocre teams that backed into the NCAA tournament, so they should win that, and they're going to get them in Raleigh. So no matter who they play, including Virginia, I think it's a home game for Tennessee. Now if they get to the Sweet 16, they would play. They've already beaten South Carolina, and then they would play either Oregon, Creighton, or Akron. I think all three of those are possible winners. So let's get to the Elite Eight. Let's assume they face Purdue. If they don't, they'll be a favorite. The only thing that draws back Purdue is the game would be in Detroit, which, yes, that does give Purdue an advantage. But I think Tennessee fans travel well.
You know what's absolutely crazy, John? Is Tennessee's 24-8, 14-4 in the conference. Kentucky's 23-9 and 13-5 in the SEC. This is one of Tennessee's greatest seasons ever. It's kind of a downer for the Wildcats. Kind of puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Yes, but Kentucky has what, 4 first-round draft picks? I think it's safe to say that.
Year in and year out.
Kentucky, we saw it. Kentucky beat Auburn at Auburn, one of the best home court advantages in college basketball now. Beat Tennessee at Food City Center, again, one of the great home court advantages in college basketball.
Kroger's.
It beat both of them there. Kentucky is capable of playing a great game. Yeah, its defense has been lacking, but to Caleb's point or yours, it's going to be motivated to play defense in the NCAA tournament. And it's got so many offensive weapons. It's a team that if it gets hot, I mean, it's got so many guys that can hit threes. It's got so many guys that can get to the basket. It has 3 7-footers that can alternate when he gets in foul trouble in the post. I mean, this team, and it may, on the other hand, it might lose in the second round. I don't know that but I just think it has the potential to go all the way. When you look at its talent, it could win a national championship. What I like about Tennessee, though, I think it got it. This is the best region for Tennessee to be in because the number 1 seed is Purdue. Purdue beat it 4 points on neutral court. Kai Ziegler was just getting to come back from a serious knee injury. And still, it was a 4-point game. Purdue has a history abysmal as Tennessee in this tournament. So, I mean, this is its best shot. That's why, I mean, I think Tennessee will make the Elite. But I think if you got Purdue and Tennessee for a Final Four bid, I wouldn't have any confidence in either one of those teams winning it, but one of them would have to. Tennessee's challenge to me would be getting by Creighton if it faces Creighton in that region.
I get sick of hearing about Creighton. I feel like I mean, I know they've had a run, but do they have another one in them? Caleb, we discussed that yesterday a little bit. I feel like everybody jumps on board Creighton like they're to the next Gonzaga.
Well, also Gonzaga is gone from tournament Cinderella to perpetual underachiever in the tournament. I mean, because they can't get that national title that they've been looking for constantly.
Word is they're making a run at Rick Barnes to go ahead and cinch the deal.
Did you say they're making a run at Rick Barnes to go ahead and cinch the deal?
That's hot.
So, John, just curious question. Rick Barnes versus John Calipari as a tactician in March. Who would you trust?
Oh, Lord. I trust my players to show up tired and not play with any sense of discipline.
X's and O's, Rick Barnes versus John Calipari in March.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually.
As a tactician, I'd trust Rick Barnes.
I would too.
By default, though, right?
Not a slam dunk. Is it a slam dunk, John?
Yeah, tear down that peach basket right now. Yeah, but it's hard. I mean, I've thought all year long, I thought Tennessee would be in the Final Four. I really have thought that. And watching that Kentucky game, though, kind of changed my mind because I know Kentucky's very talented, but your home floor and those things that Rick Barnes talked about, how senior day, the players were antsy. They wanted to make a really good impression in their farewell game. The veteran players were, they were too emotional. I don't know if you can't handle the pressure of senior day, can you handle the pressure of an NCAA tournament? It just kind of raised a question with me, and it just kind of went back, and I looked at that history. I mean, I've thought Tennessee was headed for the Final Four before, and it lost to lesser teams. So now I just don't think it'll make the Final Four for some reason. And it's not because of the opposition. I think it's the very best regional Tennessee could have been in. When I look at that number one seed, of all the number one seeds, which one could Tennessee beat? Purdue would be the handpicked one. That's who I would pick Tennessee to beat. So to me, everything went Tennessee's way, but it's how can you trust this team in an NCAA tournament?
Guys, I don't know what, and I'll remind you that John's appearance is brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. They will take care of you, push them 50 years. So that's where you need to take your car if it has any damage whatsoever to the body. That's why they've been in North Knoxville and West Knoxville for, again, pushing them 50 years. I know Mr. Newbert, they're fantastic. Newbert Collision Centers, they bring you John Adams. Guys, when I started to lose a little bit of my belief in this team, and John, I'll let you go with this, is when I realized that Kentucky, when they really wanted to play, were far more talented. And if those two teams showed up 10 times and there was $1 million on the line, I think Kentucky would win 9.5 of those games. Do you guys disagree with that?
Totally, yes. You go.
Okay, fine. Go. Tell me why.
Because I think you think that actually you're mistaking that as if Tennessee really wanted to win that game against Kentucky 2 Saturdays ago. Tennessee took off the minute they got the SEC regular season tourney, and they've been resting, like I said they should, until the NCAA tourney.
Oh,
that to me is troublesome in and of itself.
Not against Kentucky. That's Tennessee's biggest rivalry. That was a big stage. There's no way Tennessee took off in that game. Absolutely no way.
I'm sorry.
Kentucky was just better. Kentucky was just better.
If I were Rick Barnes, I would have not even played that game. I'd have forfeited and just called it a day.
You would have gotten fired then.
He just doesn't. Jerry Green showed up late. He got a tardy on his record one time.
I would have rested my starters. I would have done load management. And I'm sorry.
My gosh. Caleb, how you think? Look, why do you think Tennessee's like they needed the rest so they're not going to play hard against Kentucky in a game? Give them some time off in practice, but don't tell them, hey, guys, take it easy out there today. It's just Kentucky.
Yes,
they're going to embarrass you if you do that.
Regular season title. Who cares?
All right, so, John, we know you think the Lady Vols lose in the first weekend. What do you think of the men? His appearance brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Centers.
In its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
John, Vols get through the weekend, Sweet 16?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so, too. That's the last time we'll talk to you, though, before we get to that point. So certainly appreciate it. If you're wrong, we'll make fun of you all week long.
That's very fair, Dave.
Thank you, John. He's John Adams.
See you guys.
Appreciate that. The one, the only John Adams. As man, if Tennessee doesn't make the Sweet 16 on the women's side, that's weird to me. I don't see how you couldn't make a change. Portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House. And I'm like you, Caleb. I'm not judging it just on like one game. Somebody could get hot, or you could draw Caitlin Clark in the second round. I'm not judging it on that. I'm really not. I'm judging on the whole season. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. And Caleb, you had said this before. You would have fired Kelly Harper so that she couldn't save her job with a run in the NCAA tournament. And that can happen to anybody. I mean, you could get bounced early. You could get deeper. So I agree with you. You don't judge Kelly Harper on that ultimately, how far she gets in the tournament, but she certainly saves her job based off who I've talked to. Not that it's right or wrong with a Sweet 16 run. And I'm not so sure that they couldn't get bounced in 32 and she still saves her job. I also agree with you that the contract thing, really, what's the buyout? That's the only number that matters. We can make it for 20 years, and if the buyout's $30, then does that matter?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you extend athletic. Here's what athletic directors do, I think, a lot of times. They extend contracts and give buyouts because they want it out there when they do fire their coach. They want it clear that I gave them all the support possible.
And recruiting. Used to be.
Yes.
Not so much
and
anymore.
For recruiting. That's a good point. Yeah, that's for recruiting. You're right, for recruiting. Because, again, I bring up the Dave Hart thing because when Dave Hart came out and said, I'm not renewing anybody's contract, like publicly, which I've never heard a athletic director publicly undercut his coach. Usually they just fire him, but they don't like publicly undercut him a year before. In my mind, I'm like, well, even if you think Derek Dooley should have been fired the next year, which he should have been, you still came away thinking Dave Hart was trying to pull the strings to make sure he didn't have a chance to compete so he could fire him. So I think athletic directors want it out there that I gave them every chance to compete. I gave them every chance to do the job. They didn't do the job, and that's why I fired them.
Can't argue with that. We're going to have 4 downs coming up. We're going to take a look at Tennessee's spring practice and some position battles that probably won't be determined in the spring, but very well could give us a great indication of what's going to happen in the fall. I want to take a second to remind you, Dynasty Pools and Spas has the best spas going, period, end of the discussion. They're made right in the United States of America in your backyard. They have that incredible showroom in Athens where you can go pick out your spa. It might be a blemish model. You might be military. You're going to get a discount almost every time. You mentioned Off the Hook Sports, you get $500 off. So go to Dynasty Pools and Spas in Athens. Have it delivered with a 2-year parts and labor warranty. It's made here, support local, and you get the steps, the cover lift, and chemicals to get you started. Go to www.dynastypoolsandspas.com, www.dynastypoolsandspas.com. It is right below. We'll be back in exactly 2 minutes. Stephen Pearl takes a shot at the Vols. Really? Yes, that happened. And also, who wins some spring practice position battles as written up by Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. 2 minutes. We'll be back with you. Stay tuned.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOK, that's hooked, when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
This day in Tennessee sports history coming up. Stephen Pearl likes to yap. And position battles ongoing in spring practice. By the way, we'll have a good wrap-up of some freshmen over the next couple of days as they're visiting with the media. Shows you that Josh Heupel, he started it last year. His first year, I don't think a freshman spoke until he played, or maybe didn't even speak his first year at all. So Josh Heupel's opening up a little bit. He did that last year and the year before. So we'll have a lot of freshman talk on the website. As for right now, you can get a look at those position battles on offthehooksports.com and a lot of good content there we encourage you to check out. If you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us grow the channel. We had a record of concurrent viewers yesterday. Let's see if we can do it all over again. That's what I'm talking about. City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust some fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you need a new unit that could cost you thousands or more when you might not. This day in Tennessee sports history. Caleb, what do you got?
10 years ago today, under Coach Gonzo Martin, Tennessee beat Iowa in overtime, 78-65. It was a play-in game for the NCAA tournament. They were an 11 seed. Tennessee and Iowa played a play-in game to get to the NCAA tournament. Tennessee had a rough start. They came back, won 78-65. That sparked a Sweet 16 run that came right on the heels of the father of the person we're about to talk about, kind of fueling, doing his part to fuel ideas that Gonzo Martin should be fired and he should get the job back at Tennessee.
Yeah. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our good friends at Apex Apparel. Go to orderapexapparel.com or just call Tyler, 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001. Logo design, layouts, signage, promo products, screen printing, full on brand supply company. They've got it all for your group or your business. 865-919-3001. Get 15% off your first order or go to orderapexapparel.com right down below, orderapexapparel.com. Be sure and ask for Tyler. We would greatly appreciate that. So let's go ahead and get to What the Age, because I'm just kind of wondering what in the world that Stephen Pearl was thinking. So we'll go, What the Age?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
What did Stephen Pearl say? Get everybody caught up to date, Caleb.
So over the weekend, Stephen Pearl was trolling some Tennessee fans. He was on an Auburn Sports Network, and he was talking about the SEC tournament. This was after Tennessee lost to Mississippi State, and he goes, quote, "I mean, I was walking to the game today, and some Tennessee fans asked me if I was going to a barbecue, trying to throw a little shade. And that's what we watched. Mississippi State barbecued Tennessee. A bunch of grown men went out there and just punked Tennessee, and Tennessee's a hard team to punk." Unquote.
Not surprising. I don't mean this as a shot, but Stephen Pearl always seemed like the type of guy who was standing on third base and said he hit a triple, but he didn't. He's the son of a coach that happens to be, I think, one of the better coaches of his generation. I'm not going to say elite yet, but really, really good. That opens up all kinds of doors for you. So, Caleb, I can't say that I'm incredibly surprised. I think Stephen Pearl should have been smarter than to make himself the center of attention, because this doesn't help his look.
He is a Nepo baby.
What is a Nepo baby?
Where you get jobs because of who your parents are or because of a connection. He is, let's be honest, he played way too many minutes when he was at Tennessee on scholarship because he was the coach's son. I mean, the guy never should have been on the court, and he was logging 10, 12 minutes a game. And now Bruce Pearl will sit there and say, well, that team made the Elite Eight. Yeah, whoever was like, man, without Stephen Pearl, Tennessee's not going to the Elite Eight that year, guys. Nobody's saying that. And, now he is the assistant coach at Auburn. And how did he get a job as an assistant coach? And by the way, he was promoted to associate head coach.
It's highly qualified.
Highly qualified. Highly qualified. As qualified as Tyler Summit was to become a women's basketball head coach at age 22.
Yes.
And, it's that was a time, 2007 to 2010, where you had two Nepo babies get coaching jobs they ended up not deserving in their professional careers that were kids of Tennessee basketball coaches. I'm sorry. It's this shot was a little like, one, Stephen, you know as well as I do that Tennessee didn't care about the SEC tournament game. I've gone through that enough. But the other thing that kind of bothers me about this is, if you're the Pearl family, you might need to shut up about that barbecue joke, because Bruce Pearl really, really wishes he had been able to stay at Tennessee.
Well, now, I want to get into that. Travis brings up a really good point. You can't talk crap and then get roasted by Mississippi State. Right?
Fans talk crap all the time. You're the associate head coach of Auburn. Maybe you should, this is weird for me to say. I'm not like, be all classy and stuff, but I do think coaches shouldn't engage in trash talk with fans. I do think that's beneath coaches.
Okay. I'll give you an example of that. First, I want to tell you about Don Self. I'm a big fan of Don Self at State Farm. He's a State Farm agent in the Chattanooga area. Go to donself.net. If he's not in your area, he'll direct you to the right person, donself.net, donself.net, or call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, Don Self has built his reputation. So when you file a claim that you're going to get taken care of. And I'll tell you what, everybody's chasing the best rate now. That's not the way to go. Can I give you like a weird analogy? I sometimes do that, Caleb. I hope it doesn't bother you. Does it?
No, I'm fine. You can give me a weird analogy all day.
All right. So my son's an active guy. He goes outside and he plays. And we had this does tie into what we're talking about, Stephen Pearl. So he had a neighbor that was a young kid. We're talking 10, 12, somewhere in that range. He was very inactive. And at one point, I did the old, I guess it's from the 1950s now. You can't do it nowadays. But I said, hey, you guys need to go out and play. You can't play video games. You'll be in this position one day, Caleb. And the boy came down with my son. My son wasn't crazy about going outside and playing. But this guy looked at me, 10, 12-year-old, looked at me dead in the eye. Look at me in the eye, Caleb, right now. I'm going to do this. I'm not coming down here anymore. My response was, and? My response to Stephen Pearl is kind of like, and? If Mike Krzyzewski took a shot at you like this, I'd be like, whoa, maybe you're on the wrong side of basketball karma. When Stephen Pearl takes a shot at you, I'm like, well, it's an assistant coach from another team. It just happens to have a tie back to Tennessee.
I think this really shows how much of a not coach and still college kid that Stephen Pearl is, though. This is what I think. Like, you're an associate head coach. That's one step away from head coach. Like, you should be a head coach soon. You should expect to be a head coach soon.
Something happens to Bruce, he's the guy, right?
Yeah, he's the guy. And you're out here engaging in trash talk with fans, and people are going to come at me with things like things that coaches have said in the past. People will come at me about Steve Spurrier, for instance, taking shots at Tennessee. Every shot Spurrier ever took was at a booster meeting with boosters that kind of got out, or he leaked a joke to the media. But he didn't he wasn't, this Spurrier wasn't trying to do back and forth trash talk with fans, right?
Absolutely not. He was above that. He would call columnists in other cities to pass it along.
Exactly. Stephen Pearl is clearly like your typical college kid sports fan, bro, that's just happening to be a head coach or an associate head coach. By the way, taking cues from his dad, who I have told you guys for a while, Bruce Pearl has been in a 25-year midlife crisis. Okay, he wants to go back and be a frat bro in college, and he hates that he's getting old and can't do that anymore. And he's had a problem with that for 25 years now, and he's still in it. That's why he goes and paints his shirt or paints his chest or takes his shirt off at Auburn games and goes wild with the fans. It was like, he's one of the guys. So he's trying to act like a college kid still because he's having a midlife crisis, and he's been in one for a long time. So it should be no shock that his son now still tries to act like he's a college sports fan and not a coach at age 36.
Okay, this isn't a story if Florida's assistant coach, who has no tie to Tennessee, says something like that. But Stephen Pearl lived, and I don't know if he's technically a coach, but he was an administrative assistant and a player. So he lived in Tennessee, was in Knoxville, and I think Bruce Pearl, at least publicly, has always been supportive of Tennessee. But this to me is hurtful for a lot of Tennessee fans because it's the Pearl family. So I ask you, is Tennessee's fan base completely over Bruce Pearl? It's on our YouTube page. Please vote. Because right now, out of the two options, yes, way gone. No, I'd still take him back, getting 75% of the vote. But it's early because I just posted it. So vote now. Surely to goodness, 75% of Tennessee's fan base wouldn't trade Rick Barnes for Bruce Pearl right now. Surely.
I don't think so. Given all the issues that Tennessee has found themselves in over the years. I mean, we're forgetting this. Bruce Pearl, after ratting out a player himself as an assistant, then got caught in an NCAA violation that got himself fired. And we're forgetting this. Auburn did have a postseason ban about 3 years ago because of a recruiting violation. I mean, the guy has been in trouble consistently.
I'm going to be real honest with you. Caleb and I was watching some of our old shows, and Caleb was wearing like a toboggan. I think he was in a basement, and it was classic. But we still get to know each other after a year. I was actually trying to tee you up because I thought you'd say, of course they'd bring Bruce Pearl back. I would. If I could make the change tomorrow, I got age on my side, right? I got a guy who likes to be in one place, loves Knoxville. I don't have to worry about it. I don't think he'd ever make a mistake again. I think he's a better overall coach.
He made a mistake 3 years ago.
That was a little one.
That was a bigger one than the one he made at Tennessee. And also, you keep bringing up age. All right. Don't make the body shame, but... Okay, yes, Rick Barnes is older than Bruce Pearl, but once you hit your 60s, you know this. A lot of it is your health. Who looks healthier to you, Rick Barnes or Bruce Pearl? Take the number out of it. Who looks healthier?
Rick Barnes looks like he hits the Bible, and Bruce Pearl looks like he hits the bottle.
So even though Rick Barnes is 70 and Bruce Pearl is, I do believe, 65, 64, something like that. I think he was... Yeah, he was born in 57, right? So I think he's 60.
I didn't realize he was that old, honestly.
Actually, hold on. I don't want to. I'm not going to. Yeah, if we're doing this, I got to get Bruce Pearl's age right. I'm sorry. He's 64. He's 64.
Oh, wow. No, I actually didn't realize he was that old. So
he turned 64 yesterday. We're looking at this.
I thought it was his birthday on Sunday. I thought it was St. Patrick's Day, but I could be off by a day. Now 64 years old, so maybe that's not a big difference. Yeah, I'll give you that. Age between those two and probably the health of knowing them. Yeah, Rick Barnes is probably a younger 69 than Bruce Pearl is a 64.
I think Rick Barnes has the health of an average 55-year-old man, honestly. And he's 70. He's going to be 70. I mean, he looks really, really healthy for his age. And I think he takes care of his body. You're right. I think Rick Barnes is very religious, and sometimes people that are very religious, when they're not, sometimes they'll be like Hugh Freeze and pick up prostitutes all day and use religion to cover, but sometimes they'll be like Rick Barnes. And I think for Rick Barnes, he's so truly deeply religious. I think it creates a Zen-like mentality for him. Does that make sense? He's almost like fully at peace with himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's what faith is supposed to do. I mean, even if you choose another religion, I happen to be Christian, but if you choose another religion, that's what strong religious or belief and faith in something is supposed to do to you. And I think he has that. And let's face it, whether or not you're Christian, there are a lot of things in the Bible, take things in moderation that are good life advice, even if you don't believe the whole moral of the story. So if you live by those rules, you're probably going to be more successful in life. Pearl has not won a championship, as we were asked on the message board.
But he's made a resume as Rick Barnes.
It's basically the same resume. He made a Final Four. I don't know that resume we could pick one over the other. I think they're pretty much tit for tat. Now, I will say this. They needed Bruce Pearl to be Bruce Pearl when Bruce Pearl was Bruce Pearl. He set up Rick Barnes to not have to sell the program. Bruce Pearl at the time would have been a better fit when he was hired than Rick Barnes or Mike Krzyzewski, because they needed somebody to sell the program. And he did that. He laid a platform. Now we can at least have the discussion. I'm not sure it was even a discussion shortly after he left, was it?
When that it was should, not even
that Tennessee fans wanted him back. That I thought the Fulmer Okay, go. Sorry. I thought the Fulmer, just to explain, I thought the Fulmer thing, it was about 60-40 people wanted him gone. I thought the Pearl thing was about 80-20 people wanted him to stay, and they wanted to work it out. Didn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think, particularly when people got very upset when they found out that had Tennessee actually legally fought this case, they probably could have won in front of the NCAA, and they just, threw Pearl to the wolves. But they remember 2014 when Quanzo Martin was on the hot seat. There was that letter that was signed that everybody was like, fire Quanzo, Bruce Pearl's show calls us up, let's bring him back to coach Tennessee. And that got a lot of signatures. And there were, I will never forget, and I'm going to give him a shout out. Wes Rucker was at the time reporting. He was like we were with Boo Carter last year. He was like, guys, these rumors are silly. Bruce Pearl will never coach at Tennessee again. The administration will not hire him. They can't hire him. They can't. And everybody came at him. And guess what? They didn't hire Bruce Pearl. And they weren't going to hire Bruce Pearl. And I think now Tennessee fans are happier with Rick Barnes because the interest is there in the program. Look, you ask me, gun to my head, who's going to coach longer? I'd say Rick Barnes, even at his age.
Wow. Okay. All right.
I think Rick Barnes could coach to like 85.
I do think he'll be doing it in Knoxville. I don't think they have to worry about another team like UCLA hiring him away. But if he does need a move, he needs to call Boundless Moving. From the 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations, they've got you covered. Tennessee's movers also with an office in Charlotte, North Carolina. Their motto, personal service without limits, not just a tagline. It's part of who they are, and it's in their DNA. Coming up, we will have a complete breakdown of the Vols and the position battles ongoing in 1 minute with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Sports.
Welcome to Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where every turn meets new possibilities and every mile celebrates the cutting-edge innovation within our Ford lineup. Elevate your journey in this new 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Cab, $44,992. A 2023 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,952. 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Crew XLT, $54,900. Local you trust, innovation you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Four Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all four seasons. Four Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
We're going to talk position battles as Tennessee in the first week of spring camp. If you would like to, go ahead and throw a position up there that you have a question about, and we'll go beyond 4 downs. And that's pretty typical because Dynasty pools and spas goes well and beyond for their customers. You can get the fantastic discounts, and they deliver it all, plus all the accessories. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
I forgot that, Coop. Thank you.
Coop here. First down.
First position we want to take a look at for the Vols as spring position battles are ongoing would be left guard. I was told that's Andre Keurig's position to lose. If he loses it, there's a problem. There's a problem because you would think Jackson Lampley, who's getting some work at right guard right now, you would think that he would step in. But as I talked to somebody in the administration, Lampley was kind of So the jury's still out on him. That's an official response. So listen, Keurig's got to step up.
Yes, he's got to step up. This shouldn't be a position battle. It shouldn't be on the list. It's on the list because I watched Keurig play last year, and he was horrible. He stole more money than Dante Thornton did. I don't even care if he just got $1. He stole the most money on the team last year. He was a total Dylan Sampson might be better blocking at left guard than Andre Keurig was last year. Okay, it was bad. And if he doesn't step up this year, that's a big problem. And if it doesn't, then there's going to have to be a position battle. And again, we talked about Jackson Lampley, a few other guys that come in. You know, one of the things that you notice, I know I've covered recruiting, not as much as you, but Dave, one of the things I've learned is you always hear of these, like, there's always like a load of like 3-star linemen that never really pan out. And I'm like, I guess coaches just sign those guys just to hope that they have a body in case the starter doesn't work out. Is that what they do with linemen a lot of times? Just fill a roster spot?
Yeah, nowadays you can just push them on out the door. So I thought people over-signing never made a whole lot of sense to me. Now, on the message board, we had someone ask, 4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas, as we talk some position battles, cornerback and linebacker. So let's go ahead and get to one of those now.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, I think linebacker, you brought that up this morning, so I want to pick your brain here for a second, because to me it's pretty simple. Keenan Pili would play the Mike, and Arian Carter plays your outside backer, because I think he can allow you to do a lot of things. He's a rush the passer guy, as we all know. Also, he's athletic, so if you got caught in a bind where he's, say, on the strong side and your nickel gets caught on the weak side, I think he could do some things in pass coverage as well. I think he's one of the top 3 natural athletes on Tennessee's team. And we learned after the season he wasn't as much of a factor when Keenan Pili went down because of a shoulder ailment. I don't even know that it was an injury because he still played, but he didn't play as much. I think Arian Carter is a superstar just waiting to happen.
I agree. We thought we might see it last year, but with Aaron Beasley still there, even after Keenan Pili got hurt, it doesn't seem like they could really run Arian Carter at Mike linebacker. I thought they would. So it clearly looked like they were grooming him to step in for Aaron Beasley at Sam. So this is his moment. It's not for a different reason. It's also a position, Sam linebacker, that we think is locked down the same way left guard is. But the reason left guard was on there is because Keurig was horrible last year. The reason Sam linebacker is on here is just because Arian Carter didn't start last year, but I haven't heard anything about him not being good or not performing or anything like that. He just didn't start last year because Aaron Beasley was there. So it's a different story altogether.
Talking football right now. If you're watching on Twitter, retweet. We greatly appreciate that. But if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. A lot of you guys haven't, and I'm not going to call you out, but I'm able to check who it is. Better be nice. You know, Christmas is just a few months away.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
What about the secondary? Feels like we've had this conversation going on 4 years. Good gracious. Do I know what they're going to do in the secondary? I can't tell you. I will say this. Ricky Gibson or Jordan Matthews, one or the other, has got to take a big step. We think it's Gibson now based off what we've heard. We did think it was Matthews. And John Slaughter has shown too much flashes to me that either he doesn't understand football or he doesn't work very hard at it. But those are my 3 guys that I would say in a perfect world, they need to step up. How do you see the secondary shaking out?
Well, for starters, every single starter from last year is gone. Either graduation or not. And I mean, literally, Jalen McCullough has graduated. Wesley Walker's gone. Gabe Judolata graduated. Kamal Hatton graduated. Warren Burrell's gone. Danico Slaughter's gone. Tamara McDonald's gone. Did I name everybody? I think I just named the entire secondary. Okay. Warren Burrell, I think I named him. Okay, so yeah, it's just I normally
Willie Martinez is still there. Good news.
Oh yeah, there you go, Willie Martinez, the secondary coach. I tried to narrow this down. I was like, oh, cornerback here, safety here, and I'm like, no, just whatever, the whole darn secondary at this point, because the entire unit is up, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you can just see how everybody looks at every position in the spring and start putting guys in that way. We think Boo Carter's a generational talent. He should be. He should fill up a spot. They went for Jalen McMurray, Jermon McCoy, and Jacoby Thomas, 3 transfers. I expect them to be somewhere in the depth chart this year. And you're right. Then there's Jordan Matthews, Ricky Gibson III. One of them's got to step up at cornerback. And then another safety's got to step up between Jordan Thomas and Christian Harrison.
I think it's Ricky Gibson Jr., 3rd Esquire. I love the 3rd. Don't you love the 3rd? Are you a second
Ricky
or a
Gibson
3rd?
He's the new RG3.
He is RG3. Just keeps
the real one
putting out bad content. What down? Good.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Right. I'll ask you this question. The wide receivers, they're mighty fun to talk about the opposite of what we just talked about. I don't think there are as many question marks at wide receivers as there are exclamation marks at that position. What say you, Caleb Calhoun? 60 seconds. Dynasty Pulls and Spas. Having the best spas made right here in the United States of America in your backyard. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Their showroom is open in Athens, right off the interstate. You can stop by and check out the best hot tubs and spas in the market. And then delivery, yes, they can do that to Knoxville or Chattanooga. They've got complete support, spa cover, and chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. They also have pool chemicals as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas, amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton, and no one will ever notice. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to dynastypoolsandspas.com or stop by that showroom in Athens. dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Tennessee's 3 receivers that take the field against UTC will be whom? Caleb Calhoun.
And by the way, I want to point out the reason this is a wide open race is because everybody's good. So it's the opposite of the secondary. It's going to be Brew McCoy. It's going to be Squirrel White at the slot. And I'm going to go Dante Thornton on the other side. I think the returners are going to be there. I saw enough flashes from Dante Thornton late last year before he got hurt to think that he could be really good if he's healthy.
Okay, first off the bench. So we've had to find out who's the first off the bench the past 2 years with injuries to Cedric Tillman and Brew McCoy last year. First off the bench is, I got a surprise one for you.
I'm going to go Mike Matthews. I think Mike Matthews is a rare talent, and I think in 2025 we're going to see him be a superstar.
There goes my surprise. Thanks, Caleb.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
I mean, you just took my bleeping surprise.
I'm sorry. It's obvious. This is the Nico Mike Matthews.
I mean, I work hard to try to get some information for our good community here that we have growing, and you just take it away.
I'm sorry.
Does that make
sorry.
you
I
feel
identify these.
Does that make you feel good about yourself?
It makes me feel great. I actually identify these things pretty well. I remember when Peyton went to. No, I do. I remember when Peyton went to Denver.
It makes me feel great, that's what I was laughing at.
I actually remember when Peyton went to Denver, since you brought him up back in 2012, and the whole talk was about him with Eric Decker and them getting a wavelength. And I'm like, it's not going to be Eric Decker. It's going to be Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace. Demaryius Thomas was going to be his go-to receiver. And guess what happened? Demaryius Thomas became his go-to receiver. And I even said back then, I said Demaryius Thomas will go down as the best receiver Peyton Manning ever had. He's the best receiver Peyton Manning ever had. I identify receivers pretty well.
If you want to help Tennessee secondary, just go find where Willie Martinez helped hide the bodies, because I don't understand why he's not on the hot seat at all. I do not understand why they haven't considered going after another defensive backs coach. I know he can recruit, but goodness gracious, you not pointed out before at a school like Tennessee, if you can't recruit, then you're a complete numbskull. You have to be nice to a 17-year-old. You woo a family that most oftentimes is not loaded. You woo them with plane rides and cash and everything. I mean, you give me an open checkbook, goodness gracious, I could recruit Satan to heaven.
I have a theory, and it may not be a good one, but you enlighten me on how coaches, particularly assistant coaches, do battle with whether or not a player should play receiver or secondary or tight end or defensive end or linebacker or running back. Those are fights that go all the time among coaches, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have a theory
that
that Willie Martinez doesn't push back on Josh Heupel when Josh Heupel wants a guy to play on offense, and that's why he wants to play receiver, and that's why.
Or maybe he pushed back initially and he realized this isn't going to work. That guy wants all his best players on offense.
Yeah, that's my theory. And the only person he doesn't push back on is Rodney Garner, probably. But let's be fair here. There's not much conversion between defensive line and offensive line. Unless you're Butch Jones, you pretty much know up front whether or not they can play defensive tackle or interior offensive line, right?
Well, yeah, not to debate this point, but aren't guys more specialized nowadays coming out of high school? We don't see the guys move as often, like say up in defense so they can be faster, and that would be safety to linebacker, linebacker to end to tackle. We also don't see guys get flip-flopped from the offensive or defensive line as much. So I think you more recruit guys based off what they are than just their athletic ability, because I think to be a 3 or 4 or 5-star, you're a pretty elite athlete nowadays.
Yeah, but there are athletes that you are recruiting that could play multiple positions. And I think, but those athletes are never on the defensive line.
Right. Those are usually skill position guys, right?
Yeah, they're skill positions. And so they still exist. And Josh Heupel wants to win all those battles when he gets the skill position guys. And so he wants all of his position coaches, and including his coordinator and Tim Banks on the defensive side, to stay out of the way and not push back when he decides to put them on offense. If he wants Boo Carter at receiver, he doesn't want Willie Martinez getting in his way to do that.
No. You're not going to believe the prize pack that we have put together for our totally free Hooker Madness. Hookers running in the streets everywhere. It's crazy. I'll tell you more about it in 15 seconds.
F-150 4x4 Super Cab, $44,992. A 2023 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,952. 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Crew XLT, $54,900. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
All right, so here it is. You can see it if you're on YouTube or one of our video platforms, Hooker's Corner. We'd love for you to enter because we give away weekly prizes, and we'll be giving away this sweet little thing right here. Reach it. Oh, it is the Brew McCoy autographed helmet. I'm holding it up right now. That's our monthly price, so you can join for just $9.98 a month. However, if you would just like to be a part of our bracket challenge, we would love that. It's Hooker Madness. So go ahead and sign up. You can talk trash on our YouTube message board. We want you to be a part of it, grow that community, and free prizes. We're talking about restaurant gift certificates, T-shirts. I'm going to make sure you get a good prize pack in there. So go ahead and do that for free. Give me your bracket, and I'll give you stuff if you win. Caleb has not done his bracket yet. Is that right, Caleb?
That is right. I will be doing that today.
I'm excited. See if we have the same final four. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Join our Patreon page, Hooker's Corner. We would love to have you be a part of that. We'll be with you at 10 o'clock each and every weekday. Wednesdays mean Jimmy Himes, so that's always awesome. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation